The blade was dull. Avery had made sure of that. She wanted Thalia to feel every scrape as she shaved her head in the village square. Wanted the crowd to hear her sister's choked sobs echo off the stone walls of Ashvale. "Look at her," Avery laughed, holding up a fistful of severed hair like a trophy, her golden locks gleaming in the sunlight. Bald and worthless. Not even the lowest Omega would claim this thing. Thalia's vision blurred red as blood trickled down her scalp. The crowd's laughter swallowed her scream. She didn't know that across the valley, a black-eyed alpha had just caught her scent on the wind. Rain after drought, blood on snow. Home. She didn't know he'd been searching for 3 years, rejecting hundreds of offered brides, his wolf howling with desperate hunger. She didn't know that ruthless Alpha Osiris Duran was coming for her, whether she was ready or not. And she definitely didn't know that this humiliation, this moment of being stripped bare before her enemies, would be the absolute last time she'd ever kneel. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. Trust me, this story only gets better. Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far Thalia and Osiris's story travels. Now, let's get into it. The steel scraped against bone, and Thalia tasted copper. Her own blood, mixing with tears she'd sworn not to shed. "Hold still," Avery hissed, yanking another fistful of dark hair. The crowd in Ashvale Square pressed closer, hungry for the spectacle. "Unless you want me to slip and take an ear." Thalia's knees ached against the cobblestones. She'd been kneeling for what felt like hours while her sister worked the blade across her scalp with deliberate slowness. Each stroke was a sermon, a public declaration of everything Thalia had failed to be. 21 years old, unbonded, unworthy. "This is kindness," Avery announced to the gathered villagers, her voice carrying the practiced sweetness she used when twisting the knife deepest. She embarrassed our family at the Harvest Moon gathering. Every eligible wolf in 3 territories and not 1 bond. Not even a flicker of recognition. Someone in the crowd laughed. Thalia recognized Widow Harmon's cackle. "So I'm correcting her." Avery grabbed another section, the blade biting deep enough to sting. "Making her presentable for what she actually is." Nothing. The hair fell in clumps around Thalia's knees. She'd grown it for years, the only thing about her appearance she'd taken pride in. Avery knew that. That's why she'd chosen this particular cruelty. "No one wants damaged goods," Avery continued, her fingers rough against Thalia's bleeding scalp. "You're a stain on our bloodline. The least you can do is look the part." When it was finished, Avery held up a shard of polished bronze. "See? Isn't that better? Now everyone knows exactly what you are, just by looking." Thalia saw her reflection and felt something inside her crack. The bald stranger staring back looked broken, looked like she deserved this. "The Alpha King arrives in 3 days. Village Elder Kenzo's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "For the claiming ceremony, every unbonded female will present themselves in the square at dawn." Thalia's stomach lurched. The claiming ceremony, where Alpha King Osiris Duran, the Ruthless they called him, would choose a mate from among the offered daughters. Every noble family would parade their finest, hoping to catch his eye and secure their bloodline's future. "You'll hide," Avery whispered, hauling Thalia to her feet by her raw scalp. Pain exploded white behind her eyes. "You'll stay in the cottage with the shutters closed. If he sees you, if our family is associated with this..." She shoved Thalia toward the crowd, making her stumble. I promise you'll wish I'd only taken your hair." The crowd parted like she carried plague. Thalia ran. Her cottage sat at the forest's edge, small and dark and mercifully empty. She bolted the door, then immediately went to the water basin, needing to see, needing to confirm it was real. The reflection was worse in privacy. Without the crowds jeering to distract her, she could only stare at the mutilated stranger. Blood crusted along the uneven cuts where Avery had been careless. Her skull looked too pale, too exposed, like something meant to stay hidden had been dragged into light. She looked exactly like what Avery had called her. A stain. Damaged goods. Wrong. Thalia's hand trembled as she touched her bare scalp. The skin felt foreign, obscene. How had she ever thought she was worthy of a maid bond? This was the truth of her, finally visible. The broken thing she'd always been inside, now written on her flesh for everyone to see. Her old head wrap sat folded in the corner, delicate thing she'd embroidered with silver thread, back when she'd had hope. Back when she'd believed the bond would come, that she'd be chosen, that she'd matter. Thalia fed them to the hearth fire one by one, watching the thread blacken and curl. The flames felt appropriate, cleansing. By dawn, she'd be gone. Over the mountains, into the territories where no one knew her name or her shame, where she could disappear into obscurity and stop waiting for a bond that would never come. At least I'll be aerodynamic when I'm running for my life, she thought, and laughed once, sharp and bitter as poison. The sound echoed in the empty cottage, and Thalia realized with sudden, crushing clarity that this was her future. Alone, running, marked by her sister's cruelty forever. She touched her raw scalp one final time, memorizing the feel of her humiliation. Tomorrow, she'd run. Tonight, she'd burn everything that reminded her she'd once believed she deserved better. Thalia made it halfway to the ridge before her body betrayed her. The pull started as a whisper behind her ribs, gentle, insistent, growing stronger with each step she took away from Ashvale. By the time she heard the distant thunder of hooves, it had become a rope around her sternum, dragging her back toward the village square. No. She pressed deeper into the forest, wrapping her arms around a pine tree. The rough bark bit into her palms. I won't. I can't. But her wolf stirred for the first time in years, whining with desperate need. The bond. After 21 years of silence, it was finally calling. And it was calling her toward the Ruthless Alpha. Thalia tied her head wrap tighter, the coarse fabric scratching against healing scabs. She couldn't present herself. Wouldn't. Avery would kill her, and besides, no alpha wanted broken goods, especially not a king. The hoofbeats grew closer. Through the trees she glimpsed the village square transformed. Every eligible daughter lined up in their finest silks, perfumed and preened. Avery stood at the front, golden hair cascading down her back like a waterfall, her smile sharp as knives. Then he arrived, and the world held its breath. Osiris Duran sat astride a black warhorse that looked like it had been carved from midnight and rage. But it was the Alpha himself who made Thalia's mouth go dry. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair pulled back from a face that could have been beautiful if it wasn't so clearly built for violence. Scars traced his jawline. His eyes swept the gathered daughters with cold assessment. He dismounted in one fluid motion. The village elder began his formal welcome, gesturing toward the line of presented females. Osiris didn't look at them. His head turned toward the forest, nostrils flaring. "Rain after drought," his wolf whispered. "Blood on snow. Home." Thalia's heart stopped. No, it wasn't possible. But he was already moving, walking past the line of daughters without a glance. Avery's smile faltered. The elder stammered. The crowd murmured in confusion. Osiris walked straight toward the tree line, straight toward her. Thalia pressed harder against the pine, willing herself invisible. The bond blazed brighter, a golden thread connecting her ribs to his chest, reeling her in. "My lord!" Avery's voice rang out, desperate and honeyed. She stepped into his path, skirts swirling. "Perhaps you're confused by the layout. The presented daughters are here. I'm Avery Garner, eldest daughter of..." He moved past her like she was smoke. Avery's face transformed, shock melting into rage. She followed, heels clicking on stone. "You can't possibly be going toward the forest. There's nothing there but..." Osiris stopped 10 feet from Thalia's tree. His eyes found hers through the branches. The bond slammed into place like lightning. Gold light erupted between them, visible and blazing, the unmistakable signature of a true mate bond. Thalia gasped, her knees buckling. The head wrap slipped from her scarred scalp, falling to the forest floor. For one terrible moment, she waited for his face to change, for disgust or disappointment or rejection. His expression didn't change. It deepened. Dark eyes tracking over her bare head, the healing cuts, the raw exposure of her. His jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice was granite and gravel. "There you are." "No!" Avery pushed through the gathering crowd, her voice shrill. "That's my defective sister. She's unbonded, she's broken, she embarrassed our family." "She's mine." Osiris's voice cut through Avery's protest like a blade through silk. He extended his hand to Thalia, palm up. An offer, not a demand. "Come here." Thalia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This was a mistake. It had to be. The bond didn't choose broken wolves, didn't choose shameful, bald, worthless. "I can hear your thoughts, mate." His voice gentled, though his eyes remained fierce. "Every single lie they taught you. Come here. Let me prove them wrong." Her legs moved without permission, carrying her forward on shaking limbs. The crowd had followed, circling at a distance. She could feel their stares burning into her exposed scalp. When she reached him, Osiris cupped her face with both hands, tilting her chin up. His thumbs traced the healing cuts Avery's blade had left. "There must a mistake," Thalia whispered. "The bond doesn't make mistakes." His eyes held hers, black and bottomless and certain. "I am Osiris Duran, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I claim this woman as my mate and queen." His voice carried to the crowd, formal and absolute. Then softer, just for her. "Do you accept?" "I don't understand. I can't be." Her voice broke. "You are. You can be. Say yes." Somewhere behind them, Avery made a sound like a wounded animal. Osiris didn't turn. He waited, patient as stone, while Thalia's world rebuilt itself around this impossible truth. The bond hummed between them, warm and golden and real. "Yes," she breathed. He smiled then, quick and fierce, and pulled her against his chest. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Thalia heard Avery's voice rising above them, shrill with protest. Osiris turned to address the gathered villagers, one arm anchoring Thalia to his side. Anyone who has an opinion about my mate's hair is welcome to lose theirs. His smile showed teeth. Permanently. The whispers died. Even Avery fell silent, her face mottled with rage and disbelief. Thalia stood in the circle of the Ruthless Alpha's arms, the mate bond singing in her chest, and thought, maybe I can be aerodynamic and claimed. The thought made her laugh, once, sharp and bright with hysteria. Osiris looked down at her, eyebrow raised. Tell me later, he said. We're leaving. The carriage smelled of leather and pine, and Thalia pressed herself against the far corner like a cornered animal. Osiris sat across from her, taking up space in a way that should have felt threatening, but somehow didn't. He hadn't spoken since they'd left Ashvale 3 hours ago, just watched her with those dark, patient eyes, while she wound the scarf tighter around her head, fingers trembling. Every time the carriage hit a rut, she flinched, waiting for the cruelty to start, waiting for him to realize his mistake and throw her out onto the road. You can breathe, he said finally. I don't bite unless asked. Thalia's laugh came out strangled. I don't know what you want from me. Right now? Nothing. We have a 3-day journey. There's time. Time for what, she didn't ask. The bond hummed between them, warm and insistent, but she'd wrapped herself in so many layers of shame, she could barely feel it. When they stopped at dusk to rest the horses, Thalia climbed out gratefully, needing distance from the suffocating intimacy of the enclosed space. The forest here was different than Ashvale. Older, wilder, the pine stretching toward a sky turning violet with twilight. Osiris built a fire with efficient movements, while his beta, Brayden, tended the horses. She recognized Brayden from the claiming, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, with a scar through his eyebrow that gave him a perpetual look of skepticism. Sit, Osiris said, gesturing to a log near the flames. Thalia sat, keeping the scarf wound tight. The heat felt good after the chill of travel. Osiris settled across from her, firelight painting shadows across his face. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he reached for the hem of his shirt and pulled it over his head. Thalia's breath caught. His torso was a road map of violence. Claw marks raked across his ribs in 4 parallel lines, the scar tissue thick and silvered. Other scars scattered across his chest and shoulders, blade marks, burn marks, the evidence of a life lived in combat. My uncle, he said, fingers tracing the claw marks. He didn't want to give up the throne. Thought he could kill me during the challenge and claim it was a fair fight. His smile was bitter. He was wrong. Why are you showing me this? Thalia whispered. Because we all carry what tried to destroy us. His eyes found hers across the fire. The question is whether we let it define us. The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Thalia's hand went to her scarf automatically, protective. I want to see your face, Osiris said. Not to judge, just to see. No. The refusal came out sharp, panicked. He nodded slowly. All right. When you're ready. That patience undid something in her chest. Avery would have ripped the scarf off herself, made it another violation. But Osiris just pulled his shirt back on and started preparing their meal, giving her space to breathe. They ate in comfortable silence. Braden announced loudly that he was going to scout the perimeter, very far away, very thoroughly, and disappeared into the trees with barely concealed amusement. The stars emerged, brilliant and cold. Thalia found herself speaking before she'd planned to. Why would the bond choose someone broken? Osiris looked up from banking the fire. You're not broken. I'm 21 and unbonded. I have no family worth claiming. My own sister hates me enough to. Her voice cracked. She gestured at her hidden head. I'm everything a queen shouldn't be. He crossed to her side of the fire, moving slowly, telegraphing his intention. Sat beside her on the log, close enough that she could feel his heat. May I? His hand hovered near her scarf. Every instinct screamed to refuse, but something in his eyes, that steady, patient certainty, made her nod. His fingers were gentle as he unwound the fabric. Each layer peeled away felt like skin being flayed. When the last fold fell away, Thalia squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch his face change. Look at me, Osiris said softly. She couldn't. Thalia, look at me. She opened her eyes. His expression hadn't changed. If anything, it had gentled. He didn't touch her bare scalp, just looked. His gaze tracing the healing cuts, the uneven patches where Avery had been deliberately cruel. Beautiful, he said. Every part of you. The dam broke. Thalia sobbed. Ugly, wrenching sounds she'd held back for years. All the shame, all the degradation, all the time she'd looked in the mirror and seen exactly what Avery wanted her to see. Osiris pulled her against his chest and held her while she shattered. One hand cradled the back of her bare head, his palm warm against her scalp. The touch should have felt violating. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time. You're not broken, he murmured into her hair. You're a blade that hasn't been sharpened yet. But you will be. I promise you that. When the sobs finally quieted, Thalia pulled back enough to see his face. Her eyes were swollen, her nose running. She probably looked hideous. He smiled and wiped her tears with his thumb. There you are, he said. And then he kissed her. Soft, asking permission with every movement. His lips brushed hers once, twice, giving her space to pull away. She didn't. She leaned in, tasting salt and smoke, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. When they broke apart, Thalia touched her bare head, feeling the scars under her own fingers. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. Osiris pressed his forehead to hers. We have time. Time. The word felt like a gift. The northern stronghold rose from the mountains like a blade thrust into stone. Thalia stared up at the fortress as their carriage climbed the final approach, her stomach twisting. Massive walls of black granite, towers that scraped the clouds, windows narrow as arrow slits. This wasn't a palace. It was a declaration of war against anything soft or gentle. It grows on you, Osiris said, watching her face. Like a fungus? His laugh startled her, genuine and warm. Exactly like a fungus. But the warmth died when they entered the great hall. Hundreds of wolves packed the space, their eyes tracking Thalia's entrance with predatory focus. She'd left her scarf in the carriage, at Osiris's gentle insistence, and now her bare head felt like a target painted on her skull. A woman detached from the crowd, gliding forward with the kind of beauty that was weaponized from birth. Dark hair swept into an elaborate twist, crimson gown cut to display wealth and power. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "My king." She bowed, the movement precise. "Welcome home. And this must be your unexpected choice." The pause before choice landed like a slap. "Lady Melina Valencia," Osiris said, his voice cooling several degrees. "My mate and your future queen, Thalia Keith." Melina's eyes swept over Thalia like she was cataloging flaws for later use. "How fascinating. We simply want what's best for our alpha, of course. I'm sure you understand." The best hung in the air, clearly implying Thalia wasn't it. The welcome feast was a nightmare dressed in silk and silver. Thalia sat beside Osiris at the high table, while course after course appeared, each one she was too nervous to eat. The conversations swirling around her felt coded, full of political landmines she couldn't identify. Lord Kenzo Morton, an older wolf with silver threading his beard, stood to offer a toast. His voice carried across the hall. "To our king and his choice of mate." He paused, letting doubt color the word. "Though some of us wonder about the legality, unbonded females have never held the crown. The law is quite clear on—" "She's bonded now." Osiris's voice cut through the hall like a whip. "The law is satisfied." Of course. Kenzo sat, but his smile suggested this conversation wasn't over. Milena rose next, goblet raised. "To unexpected blessings, may our new queen rise to meet the demands of her position." Her eyes found Thalia's. "We wouldn't want her to be overwhelmed." The toast felt like a threat. Servants filled everyone's goblets. Thalia reached for hers gratefully, meeting something to do with her shaking hands. The wine was dark as blood, smelling of cherries and oak. She lifted it to her lips. Osiris's hand shot out, knocking the goblet from her grip. Wine sprayed across the white tablecloth as the cup clattered to the floor. His face had gone deadly pale. "Don't," he started. Too late. A single drop had touched her tongue. The poison hit her bloodstream like liquid fire. Thalia's vision widened out. She heard herself scream distantly, as if from underwater. Her throat closed. Her heart stuttered, forgetting its rhythm. Osiris's roar shook the rafters. Then his arms were around her, lifting her, his voice in her ear desperate and furious. "Stay with me. Thalia, stay with me." The next days passed in fever dreams. Healers worked over her while Osiris paced like a caged wolf. She caught fragments. Bitter herbs forced down her throat, cold compresses, the constant burn of poison working through her veins. Once, she surfaced enough to see him sitting beside her bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. He looked shattered. "Your eyes are very murdery," she mumbled, tongue thick. "It's kind of attractive." He laughed, sharp and broken, and pressed his forehead to her hand. When she finally woke fully, weak but clear-headed, Osiris was still there. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair falling loose from its tie. He looked like he hadn't moved in days. "How long?" she whispered. 3 days. The healer said you'll recover fully." His hand found hers, grip almost painful. "I killed the servant who brought the wine. Publicly." messy. He paused. I'm not sorry. Thalia believed him. Something in his voice promised that the servant's death had been neither quick nor kind. Melina? She asked. No proof. Yet. The word yet carried dark promise. But I know. And she knows I know. Thalia struggled to sit up. Her body felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. I can't do this. I can't be queen if every meal might kill me. Osiris cupped her face with both hands, his touch infinitely gentle despite the violence burning in his eyes. I've killed men for less than looking at you wrong. I will burn this court to ash if they touch you again. Do you understand me? His voice dropped to a growl. You are mine. And I protect what's mine with teeth and claws and blood if necessary. The ferocity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, something in Thalia's chest unlocked. For the first time in her life, someone was choosing to fight for her, not despite her brokenness, but because she mattered. They won't stop, she said. No. His thumb traced her cheekbone. So we get stronger, faster, meaner. His smile showed teeth. You wanted to know what I need from you? I need you to survive. Everything else we'll figure out. Thalia leaned into his touch, feeling the mate bond pulse warm and golden between them. Being queen might kill her, but staying silent and small had been killing her for years. At least this way, she'd go down fighting. Teach me, she whispered. Osiris's smile turned sharp as broken glass. With pleasure. Avery arrived like poison dressed in silk. Thalia was in the training yard with Osiris, finally strong enough after the poisoning to hold a blade without shaking, when the messenger announced her sister's arrival. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't invited, Thalia said. Osiris's eyes narrowed. Then why is she here? They found out an hour later in the Great Hall. Avery swept in wearing pale blue, her golden hair cascading past her waist in elaborately braided waves, longer than Thalia remembered, as if she'd been growing it specifically for this moment. Her smile was radiant, concerned, perfectly calibrated. Sister! She rushed forward, arms outstretched. Thalia stood frozen as Avery embraced her, pulling her close. To anyone watching, it looked like sisterly devotion, but Avery's whisper cut like a blade pressed to ribs. I'm going to destroy you. Then she pulled back, eyes glistening with theatrical tears. When I heard about the poisoning, I simply had to come. I know we've had our differences, but you're still my baby sister. I was so worried. The court ate it up. Thalia saw Milena watching with satisfaction, Lord Kenzo nodding approvingly. Even some of the younger nobles looked touched by Avery's apparent concern. Osiris's hand found the small of Thalia's back, steadying. How thoughtful, he said, voice flat. I'm sure my mate appreciates your concern. Avery's smile never wavered. Family takes care of family. The gardens became Avery's hunting ground. She found Thalia there 2 days later, among the winter roses, claiming she needed private time to reconnect. The mask dropped the moment they were alone. You think you've won? Avery circled her like a predator. You're still the broken one, still the shameful little nothing who couldn't find a bond on her own. Her hand shot out, touching Thalia's bare scalp with mock tenderness. Still bald, still worthless. Thalia jerked back, heart hammering. Leave. You're not welcome here. Oh, but I am. The court adores me. Avery's smile turned vicious. And they should. I'm carrying Lord Braden's child. A legitimate heir with proper bloodline, not some accident of fate that the bond got wrong. The words hit like fists. You're pregnant? 3 months. We'll marry within the week. Avery smoothed her skirts over a belly that wasn't yet showing. The court already whispers that our child has better claim than any spawn you might produce, if you can even manage that. Fragile thing that you are. Osiris won't. Osiris will do what's politically necessary. He always does. Why do you think Mylena supports me? Avery leaned close. I am positioning myself as the true royal bloodline, and everyone can see what you are. A mistake he's stuck with. That night at dinner, Thalia watched Avery charm the council members one by one, saw her touch Braden's arm with practiced affection, heard the whispers spreading like infection through the hall. Poor dear, she's always been fragile. The bond must have made a mistake. At least Lady Avery is here to support her sister. Thalia's chest tightened. Her vision tunneled. She made it back to their chambers before the panic attack hit fully, collapsing against the door as her lungs forgot how to work. Osiris found her there 20 minutes later, curled on the floor, gasping. Breathe. He knelt beside her, hands on her shoulders. Thalia, breathe with me. She couldn't. The walls were closing in. Avery's voice echoed in her skull. Still worthless. Still broken. The bond made a mistake. Tell me. Osiris's voice cut through the spiral. Tell me what she did. I can't. Tell me every single thing she's done to you. Every single thing. The dam broke. Thalia told him about the years of systematic cruelty, the beatings disguised as accidents, the public humiliations, the way Avery had isolated her from anyone who showed kindness, had convinced the village that Thalia deserved her treatment. She shaved my head because I embarrassed her by not bonding, Thalia sobbed. But that was just the final thing. She's been killing me piece by piece since we were children. Osiris's expression had gone deadly still. When he spoke, his voice was glacial. Why didn't you tell me? Because what if she's right? The words tore out of her. What if I'm not strong enough to be queen? What if the bond did make a mistake and you're stuck with damaged goods and I ruin everything just by existing? He kissed her. Hard. Desperate. Silencing the spiral with his mouth. When he pulled back, his eyes blazed. The bond doesn't make mistakes. Your sister is a parasite who needed you small so she could feel big. And I'm adding murder your sister to my to-do list. Despite everything, Thalia laughed, sharp and broken. Get in line. His smile was savage. We're going to destroy her. Together. But first, I need you to understand something. He cupped her bare head with both hands, his touch reverent. You are not damaged goods. You are not a mistake. You survived her, and that makes you the strongest person in this entire cursed court. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's continuing despite it. He pressed his forehead to hers. She wants you silent and ashamed. So we're going to make you loud and shameless. Starting tomorrow. How? Combat training, political maneuvering, teaching you to weaponize everything she tried to use against you. His smile turned sharp. Your sister thinks she's playing chess. We're going to flip the board. Thalia's hands found his shirt, gripping tight. What if I fail? then we fail together. But I don't think you will." He pulled her against his chest. "You've been surviving her your whole life. Now you get to do more than survive. You get to win." The bond hummed between them, warm and certain. Thalia closed her eyes and breathed. Tomorrow, they'd start dismantling Avery, piece by piece. Tonight, she let herself be held by someone who saw her scars and called them beautiful. For the first time since Avery arrived, Thalia felt something other than fear. She felt fury. And fury, she was learning, could be sharpened into a blade. The training yard smelled of sweat and blood and possibility. Thalia circled Brayden, blade raised, muscles screaming. 3 weeks of dawn sessions had transformed her from someone who flinched at raised voices to someone who could hold a fighting stance for an hour without trembling. "Your left side is open," Brayden said, his own blade loose in his grip. "I could gut you in 2 moves. Then do it." He lunged. Thalia didn't retreat. Osiris had beaten that instinct out of her the first week. Instead, she pivoted, used his momentum against him, and slammed the pommel of her practice blade into his ribs. Brayden went down hard, air whooshing from his lungs. The watching guards went silent. Thalia stood over him, breathing hard, hardly believing what she'd done. "Did I break him?" she asked Osiris. Her mate leaned against the fence, arms crossed, smile sharp with pride. Only his pride. Brayden groaned from the dirt. "I'm getting too old for this." "You're 32, Osiris said. "Stop being dramatic." But the message had been sent. By afternoon, every wolf in the stronghold had heard that the new queen could fight. Not well, not yet, but enough to be dangerous if cornered. The council meeting that evening tested different muscles. Thalia walked into the chamber bareheaded, chin high, daring anyone to comment. She'd stopped wearing scarves 2 weeks ago, at Osiris's encouragement. The first few days had been torture. Every stare felt like a blade. Now she met their eyes and watched them look away first. Lord Kinzo was presenting a decree to increase taxes on unbonded wolves. They contribute less to pack strength, therefore should pay more for protection. Thalia's hands clenched under the table. Osiris's hand found her knee, squeezed once. "Your move." She stood. "I challenge that decree." The room fell silent. Kenzo's eyebrows rose. "I beg your pardon?" The Winterborn Accords of 1743 explicitly forbid taxation based on bond status. Article 7, Section 3. She'd spent every night for 2 weeks reading legal text until her eyes burned. "Your decree violates pack law." Kenzo's face went red. "A technicality." "The law isn't a technicality. It's the foundation of your authority." Thalia's voice didn't shake. "Unless you're suggesting we ignore laws when they're inconvenient? I'm sure the council would love to hear about your creative interpretation of land rights in the Eastern Territories." She was bluffing, mostly, but she learned that power was half knowledge and half audacity. Kenzo stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You dare!" "I dare." Thalia leaned forward. "I'm your queen. It's literally my job to dare." Melina's knuckles were white around her goblet. Osiris's smile could have cut glass. The decree was withdrawn. That night, Osiris found Thalia in their chambers, staring at her reflection. She'd won. She'd actually won. But the victory felt fragile, like it could shatter if she examined it too closely. "You were magnificent," he said from the doorway. I was terrified. "Same thing, often." He crossed to her, hands settling on her shoulders. Their eyes met in the mirror.
Do you know what I see when I look at you?
Someone pretending to be brave?
Someone who is brave.
There's a difference. His hand slid down her arms, turning her to face him. Take off your dress. Thalia's breath caught. They'd been intimate before, frantic, desperate couplings in the dark where she could hide, but this felt different, deliberate. Osiris, trust me. She did. That was the terrifying part. She unlaced her gown with shaking fingers, let it pool at her feet, stood before him in nothing but firelight and scars. The childhood marks on her back where Avery had been creative with her cruelty, the uneven patches on her scalp, the body she'd been taught to see as wrong. Osiris circled her slowly, and Thalia fought the urge to cover herself. Do you know what these are? His finger traced the scars on her back. Proof I'm damaged. No. His mouth followed where his finger had been, pressing kisses to each mark. Proof you survived. This one?
He touched a particularly vicious scar near her shoulder blade.
This is the day you were strong enough not to break. And this one.
His lips moved lower.
This is the day you learned to endure.
Thalia's eyes burned. Stop.
Not a chance.
He turned her to face him, hands cradling her bare head.
Say it. Say you're beautiful.
The words stuck in her throat. I can't.
Why not?
Because it's a lie. Her voice cracked. Look at me. I'm bald and scarred and broken and...
Mine.
His growl reverberated through her bones.
Every inch. Do you understand? This head,
he pressed kisses across her scalp,
is mine. These scars,
his hands mapped her back,
are mine. This body that survived when it should have shattered, mine.
She broke then, sobbing against his chest while he held her.
Then I'll say it until you believe it,
he murmured into her ear.
You're beautiful. You're fierce. You're exactly what I need.
He carried her to the bed and proceeded to worship every part of her she'd been taught to hate, with hands and mouth and whispered praise that felt like prayers. When he finally joined their bodies, Thalia felt something shift. Not just pleasure, though there was plenty of that, but a fundamental rewriting of what her body meant. Not shameful, not wrong, claimed, wanted, powerful. The next morning, Thalia walked into the council chamber and issued her first executive decree. Her voice shook, but it carried. Effective immediately, grain stores will be redistributed to border villages experiencing shortage, starting with Ashvale. Lord Kinzo started to protest. Thalia cut him off. This isn't a suggestion, it's an order. Contested decrees can be appealed to the king. She smiled. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear your concerns. Osiris leaned back in his throne, utterly relaxed.
I'm sure I will.
No one appealed. By evening, word had spread through the stronghold. The Bear Queen, that's what the common wolves were calling her, had issued her first decree, and it protected the vulnerable. In the servants' quarters and the outer yards, wolves who'd been unbonded, unwanted, overlooked, began to whisper. Maybe this queen understood them. Maybe she was one of them. Thalia stood on the balcony that night, feeling the winter wind on her bare scalp, and thought, I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm becoming something Avery never imagined I could be. Dangerous. The ballroom glittered like a trap made of crystal and candlelight. Thalia stood outside the doors, breathing deliberately, while Osiris adjusted the clasp of her gown. The dress was midnight blue, backless, exposing every scar Avery had carved into her skin as a child. She'd chosen it specifically for that reason. You don't have to do this, Osiris said, though his eyes blazed with pride. Yes, I do. Thalia touched her bare scalp, feeling the scars there too. She needs to see that I'm not afraid anymore. You're magnificent. I'm terrified. Same thing. He kissed her once, fierce and claiming. I'll be right beside you. The doors opened. Conversation died like a candle snuffed. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward Thalia as she descended the stairs, bareheaded and bare-backed, wearing her scars like armor. She heard the gasps, saw Milena's calculating gaze, found Avery in the crowd, her sister's face a mask of barely contained rage. Avery recovered first, gliding forward with practiced grace. She wore pale pink, her hair elaborately curled, one hand resting delicately on her still flat belly. Sister, how bold. Avery's smile was poison dipped in honey. Though perhaps you should have consulted with the seamstress about coverage. Those marks are quite distracting. Each scar is a day I survived what tried to break me, Thalia said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I wear them with pride. Avery's eye twitched. The ball progressed with knife-edge tension. Thalia danced with Osiris, feeling the weight of judgment and curiosity from every corner. Then Avery orchestrated her moment. She climbed the dais, Brayden awkwardly beside her, and called for silence. I have wonderful news to share. Avery's smile was radiant. Lord Brayden and I are expecting a child. We'll be married within the fortnight. Polite applause rippled through the crowd, but Thalia saw the unease on several faces. This wasn't the triumph Avery had expected. A child of pure bloodline, Avery continued, her voice sharpening. Legitimate, strong, everything our kingdom needs for its future. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Thalia felt Osiris tense beside her. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Your move. She stood, and the room held its breath. Congratulations, Thalia said evenly. I'm sure your child will be loved. Avery's mask slipped. This wasn't the reaction she'd wanted. Thalia wasn't cowering or crying or giving her the satisfaction of a public breakdown. Of course, not everyone is so fortunate in their pairings. Avery's voice took on a desperate edge. Some bonds are genuine. Others. She looked pointedly at Thalia. Well, there are stories of dark magic, manipulation, ways to fool even a mate bond. The accusation crashed through the ballroom like thunder. Osiris moved, but Thalia caught his arm. No, let me. She walked toward the dais, each step measured. When she spoke, her voice was clear and cold. You're right, Avery. Some bonds are built on lies. She climbed the steps until they were face to face. Like the lie you told our village that I was difficult, that I deserved punishment, that my failure to bond was shameful. Avery's smile froze. Thalia, You shaved my head to make me small. You beat me to make me quiet.
Thalia's voice grew stronger with each word, years of silence breaking like a dam.
You told me I was worthless until I believed it. You isolated me, humiliated me, tried to destroy me piece by piece.
That's not,
but I'm still here.
Thalia stepped closer, and Avery actually retreated.
And you're terrified, because for the first time in your life, you can't touch me, can't hurt me, can't make me small enough to make yourself feel big.
You don't deserve this.
Avery's scream shattered her careful composure.
You're broken, damaged. I'm the beautiful one, the perfect one, the one who should have been chosen.
The mask had finally cracked. Thalia smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. You're right. I don't deserve this.
She turned to face the ballroom, to all the wolves who'd watched and whispered and judged.
I didn't deserve to be beaten as a child. I didn't deserve to be shamed for something beyond my control. I didn't deserve to be made so small that I believed I was worthless.
Her voice rang clear.
But I survived it. And I'm standing here now, not because I deserved better, but because I fought for better. I survived for this. Osiris moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and unwavering.
Anyone who questions my mate's worth will answer to me. Who wants to be first?
Silence, absolute and ringing. Then the bond flared between them, visible gold light erupting from their joined hands, blazing bright enough to make the candles pale by comparison. The unmistakable signature of a true mate bond, impossible to fake,
undeniable as sunrise. The court gasped. Even Melina's calculating expression cracked into shock.
No.
Avery staggered back, her beautiful face contorting.
No, this isn't right. You're supposed to be nothing. You're supposed to stay broken.
I was never broken, Thalia said softly. I was being sharpened. Avery lunged. Whether to strike or flee, Thalia would never know. Brayden caught his betrothed's arm, looking profoundly uncomfortable. You said this was a good plan, he muttered.
Shut up, Brayden.
But the damage was done. The entire court had seen Avery's mask shatter, had seen the cruelty beneath the beauty, the desperation beneath the grace. And they'd seen Thalia stand unbroken in the face of it. Melina was the first to move, sweeping into a curtsy directed at Thalia. My queen, I believe I may have misjudged the situation. One by one, the court followed her lead, kneeling, acknowledging. Only Avery remained standing, tears streaming down her perfect face, everything she'd built crumbling around her. Thalia looked at her sister, really looked at her, and felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, but something like pity. You could have been happy, Thalia said quietly, if you'd ever let yourself be enough. She turned away, Osiris's hand warm in hers, and walked through the parting crowd. Behind her, she heard Avery collapse, sobbing. But Thalia didn't look back. She was done giving her sister power over her pain. The Bear Queen walked out of the ballroom with her head high and her scars showing. And for the first time in her life, she felt free. The emergency council session convened at dawn, and Thalia knew before entering that this was the final battle. Milena stood at the council table, like a general positioning troops, her expression carved from ice. Lord Kenzo flanked her right, several other nobles her left.
Avery lingered near the back, her face blotchy from crying, but her eyes bright with malicious hope.
"This cannot stand,"
Milena announced, before Osiris had even taken his seat.
"Last night's spectacle proved what many of us have suspected. The Queen Designate is unstable."
"Careful," Osiris said, his voice soft and deadly. "The law is clear. Ancient precedent forbids unbonded females from holding the crown." Milena produced a leather-bound tome, opening it to a marked page. Article 12 of the Founding Accords. She's bonded now. Osiris's words cut like a blade. The law is satisfied. But can we trust her loyalty? Milena's gaze swept the council chamber. She hasn't proven herself. One public confrontation with her sister doesn't erase the questions about her fitness to rule. Thalia had been silent until now, standing beside Osiris's throne. She felt every eye in the room on her, measuring, judging, waiting for her to crack. She stepped forward. "What would satisfy you?" Her voice was steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "How many assassination attempts must I survive? How many times must I bleed for this court before I'm worthy?" Milena's smile was razor thin. "Actions speak louder than words, my dear. You've been here mere weeks. You've implemented one decree. That hardly constitutes. I survived you." Thalia's words rang clear. "I survived poison meant to kill me. I survived a sister who spent years trying to destroy me. I survived being told I was worthless until I almost believed it." She turned to face the full council. "If survival isn't proof enough, then tell me what is. Tell me what test I haven't passed." Silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Then Osiris did the unthinkable. He rose from his throne, descended the dais, and knelt before Thalia. The shock wave rippled through the chamber. Gasps, a clatter as someone dropped something. Avery's strangled sound of disbelief. "What are you doing?" Milena breathed. Osiris ignored her, his eyes on Thalia alone. "I see my queen. Not because the bond chose her, because she chose to become her." His voice carried to every corner of the room. She could have stayed broken, could have let the cruelty win. Instead, she sharpened herself into something fierce and beautiful and unbreakable. Thalia's eyes burned. "Osiris." "I kneel before her not as her mate, but as someone who recognizes true strength when he sees it." He held her gaze. "And I ask the court, who among you has survived what she has and still chosen mercy over revenge?" Brayden was the first to kneel, lowering himself beside his alpha. "I see my queen." Then the guards at the door, the scribe in the corner. One by one, like dominoes falling, the wolves of the northern court knelt. Lord Kenzo hesitated, glancing at Milena, then slowly lowered himself to one knee. Milena stood alone, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. For a long moment, Thalia thought she might refuse, thought this would end in violence. Then Milena sank to her knees, though her eyes promised murder. "My queen." Only Avery remained standing, pressed against the back wall, tears streaming down her perfect face. She looked small, powerless, irrelevant. Thalia looked at the kneeling court and felt something fundamental shift inside her. Not just acceptance of power, but ownership of it. "Rise." Her voice didn't shake. "Not as subjects who fear me, but as witnesses to what I'm about to become." They rose in a wave of rustling fabric and creaking joints. Thalia walked to the center of the council chamber, forcing them to turn toward her. I will be the queen who protects the broken, the unwanted, the wolves who've been told they're worthless because they don't fit into neat categories. Her gaze swept the room. And I will be ruthless in that protection. She turned to Milena. You orchestrated my poisoning. I have no proof, but we both know the truth. You're stripped of your position as council lead. You remain on the council, but one more move against me, and you'll be exiled. Milena's face went white. As for conspirators, Thalia's voice hardened. Anyone discovered plotting against the crown will be executed. Anyone spreading poison, literal or figurative, will face exile. She finally looked at Avery, who flinched under her gaze. Avery Garner, you're stripped of your title and lands. You'll be exiled to Asheville within the week. Alone. Thalia paused. Lord Braden will retain his position and raise his child here, where it will be protected and loved. But you will not benefit from your schemes. You can't, Avery started. I can. I just did. Thalia smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. Enjoy Asheville. I hear the mud is lovely this time of year. Avery crumpled, her sobs echoing off the stone walls. Thalia felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just the quiet certainty that this chapter was finally closed. Osiris moved to stand beside her, taking her hand. The bond flared warm and golden between them. My queen, my mate, my equal. The words settled over the council like a blessing and a warning. Thalia looked at the assembled wolves, some loyal, some resentful, all of them forced to acknowledge her power, and spoke the truth that had taken her months to learn. I'm not the queen you expected. I'm not beautiful by your standards.
I don't have the bloodline you wanted. But I'm here, and I survived everything that tried to break me.
Her grip on Osiris's hand tightened. And that makes me exactly the queen you need. No one argued. The session ended with Thalia still standing at the center of the room, bareheaded and scarred, and absolutely unwavering. Avery was escorted out by guards, her cries fading down the corridor. Milena left in rigid silence, defeat written in every line of her body. When only Osiris remained, he pulled Thalia into his arms. How do you feel? He asked. Thalia thought about it, about the girl who'd knelt in the mud while her sister shaved her head, about the woman who'd just exiled that same sister without flinching. Powerful, she said. Terrifying. Free. Good. He kissed her forehead. That's exactly right. They stood together in the empty council chamber, and Thalia realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She was the Bear Queen, and she was just getting started. 3 months later, the northern stronghold had transformed into something none of them recognized. Thalia stood at the head of the council table, reviewing grain distribution reports, while Milena, carefully, deferentially, proposed an expansion of the unbonded protection laws to include widowed wolves. An excellent suggestion, Thalia said, making notes. Draft the decree. We'll vote next session. Milena bowed her head, the gesture almost genuine now. She'd learned that opposing the Bear Queen was political suicide. Better to align and survive. The laws had come fast and fierce. Protection for unbonded wolves, resources redirected to border villages, a network of informants drawn from servants, stable hands, and common wolves, the ones society had taught to be invisible. They reported directly to Thalia, and she rewarded their loyalty with land grants and titles.
The nobility had learned quickly. The queen who'd been overlooked knew exactly how to weaponize the overlooked. But the most visible change was personal. Thalia walked the castle bareheaded always, her scarred scalp catching light like a crown. Within weeks, 3 noble daughters had shaved their own heads in solidarity. Within a month, it had become fashionable, a statement of strength, of refusing to hide. The common wolves called her the Bear Queen, with reverence, not mockery. The visiting dignitary from the Southern Territories had asked about her hair at last week's feast, his tone caught between curiosity and judgment. "I lost it in a battle," Thalia had said, smile sharp. "You should see what happened to my enemies." He hadn't asked again. The letter arrived on a gray afternoon, sealed with Avery's mark. Thalia recognized the handwriting immediately. Her sister's perfect flowing script. She broke the seal in her private study, Osiris watching from the window seat. The words were bitter poison dressed as confession. Avery acknowledged defeat, claimed she'd been trying to protect Thalia all along, begged for reconciliation. The lies were so transparent, they were almost pathetic. Thalia read it once, felt nothing, and walked to the hearth. "You're not going to respond?" Osiris asked. "She doesn't get my words anymore." Thalia fed the letter to the flames, watching the parchment curl and blacken. She had years to hear me. She chose not to listen. The fire consumed the last of Avery's attempt at manipulation, and Thalia felt lighter. That evening, in their private chambers, Thalia sat before the mirror with a blade and basin of warm water. "It's time," she said. Osiris understood immediately. Once a month, she shaved her head. A ritual of reclamation, shedding old shame like dead skin. The first time, she'd done it alone, crying through each stroke. Now it was different, sacred. She wet her scalp, lathered it with oil that smelled of lavender and cedar. The blade was sharp and sure in her hand. Osiris moved behind her, his hand settling on her shoulders. "May I?" She handed him the blade. His touch was reverent as he drew the steel across her scalp in smooth, practiced strokes. Each pass was a prayer, a claiming, a celebration of the woman she'd become. Thalia watched in the mirror as her reflection transformed, not diminished, but revealed. "Do you regret it?" Osiris asked softly, rinsing the blade. "The pain it took to get here?" Thalia thought about the girl who'd knelt in the mud, the woman who'd been poisoned, the queen who'd faced down her abuser and won. "I regret that it was necessary," she said. "I don't regret who I became." When her head was bare and smooth, Osiris set down the blade and pressed his lips to her scalp, crown to crown, king to queen. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Every single time." Thalia turned in his arms, claiming his mouth with hers. The kiss deepened, turned fierce. She pushed him toward the bed, and he went willingly, both of them understanding that she was leading this dance. She'd learned her body wasn't something to hide or apologize for. It was a weapon when she needed it to be. A temple when she chose, a source of pleasure on her own terms. She claimed him as fiercely as he'd claimed her, and when they finally collapsed together, breathless and sated, Thalia felt complete. Not because of him, though he was part of it. Because of herself. Dawn found them on the balcony, wrapped in furs against the winter cold. Thalia's bare head caught the first rays of sunlight, turning her scars to gold. Osiris's arm circled her waist, solid and warm. Together they looked toward the mountains, where a line of travelers wound down the pass toward the stronghold gates.
More refugees, Osiris said. Thalia nodded. Word had spread across the territories. The Bear Queen protected the broken, the unwanted, the wolves who didn't fit the mold. They came in growing numbers, seeking sanctuary. We'll need to expand the eastern wing, she said.
Already planning.
And increase food stores. My ruthless queen, always thinking 3 steps ahead. She smiled, leaning into him. The bond hummed warm and certain between them, not what had saved her, but what had found her when she was ready to be found. They pushed me down to make me small, she thought, watching the sun climb higher. They didn't realize they were teaching me how to rise. Avery had wielded cruelty like a blade, trying to carve Thalia into nothing. But every cut had just sharpened her edges. Every humiliation had taught her exactly what she refused to become. I am the queen forged in shame, she thought. And I am ruthless with my mercy. A young wolf separated from the refugee line, looking up at the balcony. Even from this distance, Thalia could see the hope in her face, the desperate need to believe that somewhere, someone would see her as worthy. Thalia raised her hand in acknowledgement. The girl's face transformed. Relief, joy, tears. Another one saved, Osiris murmured. Another one who saved herself, Thalia corrected. We just gave her the space to do it. The sun crested the mountains fully now, flooding the valley with light. Thalia stood in it, bareheaded and scarred, and absolutely unafraid, and felt the truth settle into her bones. She wasn't the queen anyone expected. She was the queen they needed. And she was just getting started. The Bear Queen turned from the balcony, Osiris's hand in hers, and walked back into the stronghold that was finally, truly home. Behind her, the refugees streamed through the gates. And ahead of her, a kingdom waited to be transformed. The end.